Hello everyone. So Nvidia clearly bounced. I was not on live and I didn't make a YouTube video yesterday because my head is I have a really bad headache. I can't really keep my eyes open that much. Light's been bothering me as well, so hopefully by tomorrow it'll be better. But Nvidia worked. Okay, so now we have to look at what the next steps are for the market. In today's video, we're going to take a look at the S&P 500, the NASDAQ, the Russell, the dollar, the bonds. And also, I want to take a look at something new that shows that we're basically in a downtrend. We're going to take a look at what the McClellan oscillator is telling us in accordance to the 8 exponential moving average. All right. And we're going to take a look at basically how that's been correlated in the past and what that means moving forward. All right. So without further ado, let's get started with the video. All right. So this is stockcharts.com. This is the bread and butter. This is how I started learning how to trade. I still don't have a paid account for this, but this is the NYSI indicator. So you type this in, NYSI here, and this will show up. You go down and you, as an overlay, change it to the exponential moving average for the 8, right? So make the 8 exponential moving average. What this is basically showing us is the overall momentum of the market, and this is the daily chart. All right, so when this indicator crosses below or crosses above, obviously that would mean that things are either bullish or bearish. Okay, so when this black and red indicator basically cross below the blue line, which is the 8 exponential moving average, that shows bearishness. When it crosses above, that shows bullishness. All right, so what I want to look at is probably if I paid for it, I'd be able to stack some charts up against each other, but I wasn't able to do that. So I'm just going to use TradingView for that. So I want to look at the past few times this has happened. We can start with September. Okay, so September, the McClellan indicator crossed below the 8 exponential moving average. Let's see what happened in September of 2022. Okay, so this is a chart of the ES, right? This is a chart of the S&P futures on a daily chart. Back in September, when the McClellan crossed lower, all right, the market obviously tumbled. Okay, so that worked out. The next one was back here in October. Mid-October is basically when it crossed above. Okay, so what happened to the overall market now in mid-October? So let's look at the ES. What's going on in mid-October? Oh, this is a bottom, and it looks like it bounced up. So far, the McClellan, in accordance to the 8, is working out. Okay. Then again, it fell in the beginning or middle of December. Crossed lower. All right, so let's see what happens here. December, cool. Middle, beginning of December. Okay, so we clearly fell again. All right, so let's look at it again back here in February. Right, beginning to middle of February, we crossed below again. Let's see what happened to the overall market. Once again, so it fell. Okay, so basically what this is showing is every time the McClellan either crosses above or crosses below, the momentum is either bullish or in the very least, it's going to chop around. Okay, so there are instances in the past where we would cross above on the McClellan, but it doesn't automatically translate into super bearishness. What it does though is, so say for example, the McClellan crosses above, right? What's supposed to end up happening is we should bounce, but sometimes instead of bouncing dramatically, we stagnate, okay? But when the McClellan does cross, it does not end up falling lower like that, okay? So if we get a cross above, it's either neutral to bullish. Most of the time it's been bullish, okay? So I hope that's a little fun thing there. And yeah, I really like looking at that stuff. So I hope you guys enjoyed that, all right? Next, we have to take a look at the dollar and the bonds, okay? All right, so the dollar is clearly continuing to skyrocket up. It broke above levels of resistance. That is what pointed weakness in the overall market, obviously. And as the dollar is showing this strength, the overall market shows weakness. Okay, so clearly the dollar is showing strength. It's getting to a point where it's getting to the upper level of the Bollinger Band. So we have to see whether it will stagnate here for a bit and what will happen to the upper Bollinger Band. If the upper Bollinger Band starts to point lower, then it can become very overextended much sooner. And that would mean that there won't be as much room to the downside for the overall market. Correlated, it won't mean that there will be as much room to the upside on the dollar. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. Because when you're looking at the dollar or the SPY, right, we made a new low today, completely fine, right? So right now, right, according to also the McClellan, whatever, everything else like that, this is bearish, right? Even before, right, I wasn't extremely excited to go long the overall indices. I was only going long things that were extremely overextended to the downside. That would give the highest probability to a bounce. Because when the market is weak like this, even intraday, in normal bullish setups, when bullish setups would work, if they're not working, it means that there's just not enough buyers to create a huge bounce. So, for example, so all throughout the morning here until basically like 11:30, right? We dropped really, really dramatically to the downside. Usually. So a lot of people ended up going long here. 100%, a lot of people ended up going long around 10 a.m. Usually, something like this, we end up getting a very dramatic bounce. This would pull back a bit and continue rising. But because there aren't enough bulls and enough buyers in the market, on a shorter time frame, this move is not as dramatic to the upside, which means that going long into momentum, and especially just going long in general right now, is much more difficult. It's much easier to go short. First of all, in terms of day trading, right? It's much easier to play alongside the momentum of the overall time frames, the larger time frames. If the larger weekly, daily, 4-hour time frames are showing bearishness, then it's easier to be short, to basically go short at levels of resistance, not to buy dips and not to go long alongside strength. It's much easier to play alongside the overall momentum. So if you had done that, right, it would work. And the other thing is, the only times I was trying to go long was on stocks like Nvidia or Apple, where we were showing extreme overextensions to the downside and support is still being held. So Apple obviously isn't doing that well, but everyone who got into Nvidia, when I was explaining that, if I was basically showing the exact same setup on Nvidia and how that correlated to Tesla as well. So I was trying to explain that even if Nvidia fell even lower and it was still trading outside the lower bands, similar to what ended up happening with Tesla, showed Tesla. Yeah. So I showed Tesla back here, where we were very overextended to the downside and we ended up making another low, and that would have basically marked the bottom. So similar to basically what ended up just happening on Nvidia, it was very similar. We were very overextended to the downside. We opened lower and that marked the bottom. So I hope all of this stuff is basically just helping, right? And these are the only setups that I would be long. Everything else does not make sense to try to be bullish. It does not make sense to try to go long. There aren't enough buyers right now in the market. And also, according to, I just showed you guys the McClellan, the overall momentum is bearish. So, we didn't look at this, but it happened in the beginning of August. We crossed lower on the McClellan, right? For the SPY, we can take a look at what that looks like. It's the beginning of August. So we crossed lower here beginning of August, and it's been bearish ever since, basically. So yeah, there just isn't enough strength. There's not enough buyers. There isn't enough popping strength to the upside right now. It just makes more sense to short pops. And until we get much more overextended to the downside, and specifically, I really would like to go long around 438. If we get there, that'd be nice. But especially on the overall market, the S&P, everything like that, it's not safe to go long, in my opinion, for those multiple reasons. And just quickly taking a look at the bonds are showing weakness. They're still showing lower lows, right? This is not bullish on the bonds, and the bonds are important because if the bonds are showing weakness, then it shows weakness in the overall market as well. So yeah, it's just not a good setup for anything. Even the IWM, for example, the IWM clearly very overextended to the downside, right? But because there's not enough buyers, it doesn't make, so we came to a major level of support here. 187, 188 on the IWM, super important. But generally, if we were in an uptrend, not in a downtrend, if we were in an uptrend, this would be a massive buying opportunity. You know, we could easily bounce off of this, but it's not screaming bullishness. So yeah, we just need to see how futures open on the IWM, if we're going to be opening outside the lower bands. Intraday, once again, similar to what happened on Monday, we fell much lower intraday, but then we ended up closing green. Similar situation could end up happening as well. So yeah, what I'm gonna be looking at is to see where the futures open on the Russell, and hopefully, once again, if we're opening outside the lower bands on the Russell futures, then we could lean a bit bullish on the IWM tomorrow. But aside from that, you know, I really want 438 on the NASDAQ. I want 438 on the SPY. The NASDAQ is still holding above these levels of support. It's not, you know, it's just until buyers start coming back in, we just have to lean short, and we have to be safe with trying to enter long. We need to have stop losses. We can't blindly keep on buying dips and buying dips and buying dips. The bounces were not happening as much, and yeah. So until, basically, in my opinion, if the dollar can start to become very overextended to the upside here, that would correlate to around 437, 438 on the SPY. All right. So that's where I would like to look for a pullback in the dollar and a bounce in the SPY. All right. So that's that. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Please make sure to like, comment, subscribe, do all that good stuff. And I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. And yeah, have a good one. Thank you.